Yeah, the labor market is a market for allocating the resource of labor efficiently. It's not supposed to be a tool for pushing money to consumers, but we're using it that way. I like to say that wages are coercive, and that's not a bad thing. It's what wages are for. It's to get people to do things. So to the extent that people are receiving their money through wages, they are less free and they're under more coercion. So you'd want to only force people to work to the extent that the product of the labor is actually useful.
One of the things that intrigues me in this debate around productivity and labour shares is that while the UBI is be paid to everybody and can lift up the base, the problem then comes that you've got potentially a smaller elite of employed people who are potentially earning very high wages of very productive capital, and that we also need therefore to be thinking about how that work is shared, because potentially for every person doing that job, maybe working 40 or 50 hours a week, you could have 3 or 4 people who are equally capable, and that potentially sharing that work by reducing what is standard hours, as we once had standard hours sort of 70 or 80 hours a week, 100, 150 years ago, potentially getting our standard hours down to 20 hours a week or 5 hours a week, and sharing that income that's generated from work. So I just thought I'd make that observation and be interested to hear what your thoughts are about that, Alex.
Yeah, so my understanding is that you want to share the work because you want to share the income from that work. Is that correct?
Well, both. Potentially, the work itself could be interesting. It can provide, friendships and reason to get up in the morning as well. And that while there are people who would like to do that work, then we ought to have a market that allows them to access it, rather than restricting it to say, well, okay, there's a 40 or 50 hour a week job here. We've given it to one person. They've got it all. And you now, you other 3, sorry, you've missed out, when they're quite capable of doing the work. And so yeah, it's really a matter of looking at it from both the human perspective as well as the income side. Alex, yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's a few different problems we need to solve, and they're kind of connected to each other. One is, how do we distribute money to consumers efficiently? One is, how do we allocate labor efficiently? And then another is, how do we ensure that people have access to other things that maybe can't really be provided by the market or something like that. Like you're talking about meaning and purpose from jobs, that kind of thing. You could imagine a world where the government is providing activities for people, and that's something that they would actually pay to do because it's meaningful, that kind of thing. I think we kind of expect these 3 things from the labor market. We expect labor allocation, money distribution, and then kind of meaning and purpose. But to the extent that you're doing these other 2 things through the labor market, you're sacrificing efficient labor allocation. So I agree with you that it's potentially a problem if there's kind of an elite group of people, a small elite that's accumulating a lot of money and a lot of power, that kind of thing. I think that's a problem that needs to be addressed. That's going to be a problem that needs to be addressed regardless of what your money distribution mechanism is. And I have some ideas for Yeah, I have some ideas for how to do that. Most people kind of intuitively go to taxes first. I think that's kind of in the direction of it. Then maybe the government could also be selling goods and services, especially trying to soak up money from rich people. Like money, maybe the government is selling something that rich people want to buy, creating an incentive for them to want to give up their money and show off that they were able to spend that much money. There's various things there, and this is not this is a problem we have now. It's not something that's magically going to become a problem in the basic income world. I don't like the idea of trying to artificially distribute labor. I think, sometimes it's just more efficient to have one person doing the work and working more hours, and then having the other people not working. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's more efficient to distribute it, but you can let the market kind of figure that out. I don't think that's something, if you're not worried about using jobs to distribute money to people, you don't have to think about kind of dividing it up in that way. And also, if you're not worried about distributing, jobs and work as a way of providing people meaning and social connection, I think these are things where you're like thinking about jobs for the benefit of the worker. Whereas really, like, why is there such a thing as a job? There's such a thing as a job because there's work that people aren't going to do unless you pay them to do it. Right. So we really need to be thinking about the labor market in that sense, and kind of there's a lot of meaning that we attach. I mean, culturally, of course, we're very attached to jobs, and psychologically, it's a big thing to not have a job in our society. But that's related to incentives too, right? There's a lot of pressure in our society to kind of contribute and pull your own weight and not be a drag on society and that kind of thing. But that's related to incentives. Culturally, we've kind of adapted to an environment where people are expected to earn a living and get their money from jobs, that kind of thing. Culture can shift. It's not like a painless thing, but I like to imagine, well, what is the ideal that we're hoping to move towards? And then you can imagine what the culture would look like then. And maybe some of the things that we kind of assume go with jobs aren't going to be part of that culture anymore.